Chapter 1731, Jealous Rage. He and Chu Chenexai might even reach that stage, but the appearance of Xiaonan was beyond everyone's expectations. Xiaonan was like a hammer that had unconsciously smashed the Zai family's ice wall that was as fragile as a glass ball, causing the stiff atmosphere in the Zai family to gradually warm up like springtime. Zai Sheng could feel that his parents' relationship had improved, and Zai Hua was gradually becoming more willing to express her own feelings. At the mention of this, Zai Sheng could not help but think about someone who had been long forgotten, Wei De. Actually, when Zai Hua had first gotten together with Wei De and had even been willing to bring Wei De home to meet the Zai family, Zai Sheng was surprised. A year ago, Zai Sheng believed that Zai Hua would never have brought Wei De home or even let the Zai family learn of Wei De's existence. On the other hand, Zai Hua was definitely not one who would keep it from everyone to get what she wanted and go all out to accomplish her dreams. There was no reason for Zai Hua not knowing the Zai family's temper. No matter how blindly in love she was, Zai Hua should know very well that she could fall for anyone but a man like Wei De. She should never think that a man like Wei De was worthy of her. Therefore, the moment the Zai family met Wei De, they would definitely not be seeing just one person. Zai Sheng felt that Zai Hua would directly fling their marriage certificates in front of them as proof. That was Zai Hua's style. Since she had already guessed that her family would disagree to her being together with the Wei family, and she felt that she would live a blissful life with Wei De, there was no need to waste any more time. Anyway, the person getting married was her, not her family. There was no need to care about whether her family agreed to the marriage. She would just have to find a way to get married. Then, her family's objections would be useless. There was no doubt that the Zai family would go to war if Zai Hua had done so, and the relationships between the family members would definitely sour. It might have seemed that Zai Hua was being decisive and resolute in bringing Wei De home to meet the Zai family for them to get to know him. But compared to Zai Hua's way of doing things in the past, this was already much milder and meeker. The whole family, including Zai Sheng, knew that Zai Hua had been under Xiaonan's influence. That was why she had not let that happen. In the end, it was indeed true that Wei De was unsuitable for Zai Hua. With this gentler style of handling matters, Zai Hua had the opportunity to come to a realization and turn back, eventually finding her true happiness. The atmosphere at home only got better, and the relationships between family members only got more harmonious. It was as though the sun was shining down on the family, chasing away the coldness on a cloudless winter day. This warmth was truly soothing, and it penetrated into their hearts and bones. This was how a family should really feel like. Xiaonan was thankful that she had the opportunity to marry a good and real man like Zai Sheng. Similarly, Zai Sheng was grateful for Xiaonan's appearance. It was Xiaonan who allowed him to feel the warmth of a family. With such a blissful life today, Zai Sheng did not even want to recall how his life had been in the Zai family 20 years ago, when he had not yet met his wife, Xiaonan. He had lived in that manner for 20 years. Their triplets were truly fortunate. Because of Nan Nan, the Zai family had changed completely by the time the children were born. Children shouldn't interfere in adults' affairs. But does that mean that adults should also just stand aside and observe children's affairs? She had been married to Zai Sheng for more than 20 years and had known him for almost 30 years. Xiaonan knew that Zai Sheng's expression meant that he felt guilty. Was that to say that if she had not been in the picture, Chu Chenexai would really have become the chief's wife, and it would be a dream come true? Don't let your mind wander. I can't deny that it would have been impossible between me and Chu Chenexai if you weren't in the picture. After all, one has to get married and have children in one's life. My dad paid so much attention to Chi Minlin, and Mom's matchmaking was distorted. I didn't have much free time. Rather than wasting time on women, I would much rather sacrifice myself for my country and the army. He would definitely get married, but it did not really matter to him whom his wife would be. As long as it was convenient and would not distract him or hinder his development in the army, he really did not care who his wife was. Based on his way of thinking, Zai Sheng had never felt that the woman who married him would be at an advantage. A typical military spouse already had to deal with more than an average woman. To be Zai Sheng's wife, that woman would have to be the benchmark amongst military spouses and would have to deal with a lot more than ordinary military spouses. Whether the young lady whom he married was one whom he wanted and liked, she would get a totally different treatment from Zai Sheng. Qiaonan harumphed and unhappily turned around. With her back facing Zai Sheng, she huffed. If you had not met me and brought me home that day, and we had not known each other, you might just have married Chu Chenexai. Chu Chenexai would have become the chief's wife, and her daughter wouldn't even need to continue her work to become the chief's wife. So if you had married Chu Chenexai, I would have had nothing to do with you. But I would have had to get married and have children eventually too. Who do you think I would have married? Qiaonan herself knew that if she had not met Zai Sheng, she would probably have dated Chen Jun, who was scheming and had bad intentions from the start. But she would never have gotten married. In the end, she would stay single until her death. It was just that a situation had arisen on Zai Sheng's side and she could not afford to lose. She had to let Zai Sheng understand that if he could have married someone else, so could she. No one would have been at a loss. Hearing that Qiaonan could have married a man other than himself, Zai Sheng's expression darkened immediately. It was just that Qiaonan had her back facing him and could not see him. With a black face, Zai Sheng tried to suppress his anger. He had no intention of listening to such a topic. It was too harsh. Who else could you have married other than me? Even if there was someone willing to marry you, you couldn't have married him either. You could only marry me and be the mother of my children. Now that he was unhappy, especially after hearing his most hated hypothetical situation, Zai Sheng pulled Qiaonan into his embrace and forcefully undressed Qiaonan without hesitation. Since they were upset from talking, they might as well do something that would lift their moods. You old rascal! Qiaonan stared wide-eyed at Zai Sheng, who had already bared his arms, taken off his pants, and was now on top of her. She could hardly believe it. It had just been a moment ago that they were talking about serious matters. But in the blink of an eye, Zai Sheng was already doing something like this. I am still angry. Why was it that Zai Sheng could marry someone else, but she could not? If Zai Sheng were really to marry someone else, and she was still unmarried, that would be too unfair. Chapter 1732, Audacious. Qiaonan wanted to push Zai Sheng away, but she was no match for Zai Sheng. The moment the tiger unleashed its power, a weak chicken like Qiaonan could not do anything but beg for mercy after a few rounds. At the very most, she would never bring up this topic that made Zai Sheng unhappy in the future. Qiaonan realized that this was not the first time that they had mentioned this topic. But every time, it would always end in a fight. The next day, she would always be as weak as noodles. But on the other hand, Zai Sheng would always be full of energy and vigor as though he had replenished his yin and yang. Usually, if she begged for mercy, Zai Sheng would still try to restrain himself. But the agitation from talking about this topic made Zai Sheng merciless. The mention of this topic initially made Qiaonan feel psychologically uncomfortable and sour. But after doing that, Qiaonan's whole body felt comfortable. That was why Qiaonan was the only one who got injured every time this topic came up. Why would Qiaonan still touch on it? Only when Qiaonan fell asleep did she finally realize that they had had such a long chat, but they had not come to a consensus about the matter regarding Ma Yuan. What kind of attitude was Zai Sheng showing? Was he going to interfere, or was he going to give De Bao a heads up? Bao was such a good kid, but he had nearly fallen for Zhou Xing's schemes. No matter how sensible and intelligent De Bao was, he might just commit a folly after meeting Ma Yuan. Gao Feng had already fallen into Ma Yuan's trap. With Zai Sheng as a ready-made example, Qiaonan could not rest easy about De Bao and Ma Yuan. She was afraid that De Bao would become the second Zai Sheng and that he would simply accept Ma Yuan. She thought about how Chu Chenexai had been so ferocious and unreasonable, always trying to cause trouble. She did not wish to follow in her mother-in-law's footsteps and have to hide away when Ma Yuan and Chu Chenexai came to bother them in the future. Zai Sheng might not have answered Xiao Nan, but thankfully, he was a wife lover. Knowing about his wife's concerns, he would not let this matter develop any further for the sake of his wife, not his sons. After Chu Chenexai got married, she remained in the capital to develop her career. Zai Sheng knew about that. But after old master Shi passed away, Shi Peng did not unreservedly help Chu Chenexai and Qi Minlin as old master Shi had. As such, Chu Chenexai's career did not go far after her marriage. The man Chu Chenexai had married was miles apart from Peng Yu, let alone Zai Sheng. Chu Chenexai was a woman, after all. Her in-laws could not help her, and neither could her own mom, Qi Minlin, help her. As for that father of hers who had been released from prison, it was good enough that he did not do anything to drag Chu Chenexai's down, much less help her. Thus, more than a decade had passed, but both Chu Chenexai and her husband had not made much progress. In such a prosperous place like the capital, they did not have much to their names. After getting hold of Chu Chenexai's information, Zai Sheng quickly got into action. Both Chu Chenexai and her husband had been in the capital for quite a long while, but their annual appraisals were always very average. In the capital, no matter how average the couple was, that was still based on the standards of the central government, not anywhere else. Instead of letting the couple die in the pit that was the capital, it was better to demote them. Perhaps, Chu Chenexai and her husband could take this opportunity to do something for the country and the people and stop wasting taxpayers' money. Zai Sheng had just expressed his slightest intention of doing so and had not even said anything, but everything had proceeded so quickly. It might not be easy to help a person up through the ranks, but it was too easy to kick someone down. Even if he did not have 1,000 reasons to do so, he had 100 at least. Chu Chenexai and her husband had always been performing averagely at best. Even though Shi Peng had risen through the ranks and had firmly established himself in the central government, his attitude toward his niece, Chu Chenexai, had never changed. Chu Chenexai might not have gotten any huge benefits, but she had still benefited quite a lot because of Shi Peng. Who did not know about those important people and relationships in the capital? Chu Chenexai's performance might have been average, but what she did have was an impressive uncle and a female general, Shi Qing, as her cousin. For the sake of the Shi family, no one dared to create any trouble for Chu Chenexai or her husband. Even if they did not have many accomplishments, they would simply allow the couple to continue squatting in the pit. With such family relations, it was good enough if the couple did not make any mistakes or create trouble for them. They were not counting on the couple to do anything great for them. So it was not that Chu Chenexai and her husband could not find anyone to help them if they wanted to stay in the capital. They did have someone whom they could ask. And so, upon hearing this news, Chu Chenexai immediately went to find Shi Qing and Shi Peng for help. Shi Peng had reached the retirement age and had retired long ago. But Shi Peng still had influence. Upon hearing that Chu Chenexai had come to visit him, Shi Peng expressed that he was old and was sore all over. He still wished to experience the birth of his great-grandchild, so he had to seek treatment with a traditional Chinese doctor. He really had no time to meet any guests. It was not his first day meeting his niece, Chu Chenexai. Their families were not even on good terms to begin with, but they were trying to act like normal relatives and ask him for a favor? How could they be so naive? Shi Peng had never once forgotten how his sister, Qi Minlin, and Chu Chenexai had abandoned him when he had still been in the army and needed to eat nourishing food when he had fallen sick. If it had not been for Chu Chenexai, he would not even have needed to leave the army. The army was where Shi Peng longed to be. All his hopes and disappointments were in the army. To Shi Peng, there was a complicated nostalgia he felt toward the military. Even after he left the army and his health improved, Shi Peng knew that he would feel honored if he had died while serving the military. Because of Chu Chenexai and Qi Minlin, he had not been able to fulfill that dream. Today, he lived quite a comfortable life, but that had nothing to do with Chi Minlan and her daughter. At that time, they had not considered his feelings at all when hurting him. It was through his own efforts that he had been able to create such a life for himself. As for a niece like Chu Chenexai, Shi Peng could not kick her away any quicker. Of all people, Chu Chenexai had chosen to provoke the Zai family and be at loggerheads with the Zai family. The audacity! If the Zai family put the word out, there was probably no one in the whole capital who would dare to help her, much less himself. Chapter 1733, Comparison. If a person wanted to die, there was no way of stopping him. If he helped them this time, there was sure to be a next time. He was already advanced in age. All he wanted was to live his golden years restfully. He had no desire to get himself involved in this mess. Since Shi Qing refused to meet Chu Chenexai had no other choice. Because she had not been able to get Shi Peng's help, Chu Chenexai had no other choice but to find Shi Qing for help. Shi Peng was her uncle. Logically, it would probably be easier to persuade Shi Peng than Shi Qing. When they were younger, Chu Chenexai had had many conflicts with Shi Qing and had even bullied Shi Qing. Shi Qing was never one who was good with words. Chu Chenexai wanted to forget their childhood experiences but was unable to do so. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Chu Chenexai had not wanted to ask Shi Qing for a favor, in case she was humiliated if Shi Qing were to refuse her. But at the present moment, Chu Chenexai could no longer afford to consider that much. Chu Chenexai had long realized that she had progressed quite smoothly initially based on what old master she had given her. Chu Chenexai, who had only wanted to marry a good man all along, realized for the first time that it felt good to hold power and control over others. Unfortunately, such a good feeling did not last for very long. And Chu Chenexai could not seem to further her career. She could not seem to go any further in the central government, but the capital was a good place to be in, after all. There was no way Chu Chenexai could accept being suddenly demoted and transferred out of the capital to suffer like a young employee. She would much rather have no chance of ever rising up in the ranks but being able to remain in the capital than be demoted and cast out of the capital. To be honest, it was impossible for her to have the ambition of a young person and have the drive to make a name for herself. That would truly be a joke. She was already advanced in years. In short, Chu Chenexai had no intention of leaving. She did not want such an opportunity at all. Since she had not gotten anywhere with Shi Peng, and neither was she willing to deal with Shi Qing, she could only turn to Zhu Baoqiu. The problem was that Shi Qing and Zhu Baoqiu stood united. As long as she was able to convince either one of them, her problems would be solved. In the same vein, if either of the two was particularly against helping her, then there was really no way she and her husband could continue living in the capital. She hardly ever burned incense but expected Buddha to answer her prayers now. There was no such thing as a free lunch. When she was younger, Shi Qing had never been taken in by Chu Chenexai. Now that she was a female general, she was not going to let anyone bully her. After getting married, even Zhu Baoqiu listened to her in every matter. Especially after she had given birth to her son, even her father-in-law looked at her in a different light. It could be said that her words held the most weight in the Zhu family. She had grown older by more than 20 years. How could Shi Qing regress with age and let Chu Chenexai hold her captive now that Shi Qing had risen in ranks? Would she really just give Chu Chenexai whatever she asked for? The moment Shi Qing heard that Chu Chenexai had come to visit her, Shi Qing immediately got someone to relay a message to Chu Chenexai. Don't think that the place that you're headed to is very remote. If you dare to provoke the Zai family, Xiao Nan, or even me again, I'm sure you'll realize that there are even more remote and isolated corners in a prosperous country like China. When that time comes, don't regret your actions. No one will be able to save you then. It was true that the place Chu Chenexai was going to was not the remotest in the country. Shi Qing was sure she could find places that were even more isolated. Chu Chenexai had not provoked them too badly yet, so they had simply thrown Chuchenexai somewhere outside the capital. Chuchenexai should already be thanking her lucky stars for that. Once they really did their homework and picked out somewhere especially for Chuchenexai and her husband, Chuchenexai would not even have the chance to cry then. She should know her limits. Did Chuchenexai really think that this was the best they could do? Perhaps it was indeed true that Chuchenexai had a home advantage when she was younger, but now that she had grown into a full-grown dragon that could fly, would she still be bullied by a mere snake that crawled on the ground? What a joke! Chuchenexai was almost at the age where she could be a grandma. Shi Qing could not understand how Chuchenexai had managed to stay the same over the past 20, almost 30, years. How could Chuchenexai not grow as a person at all after all those years? No wonder Chuchenexai had never been able to progress after her grandpa's death. She wondered if her grandpa would regret leaving whatever little things he had entirely to his son and granddaughter if he were to see Chuchenexai in this state today. He had wasted all his resources. Thankfully, she could not care less about whom her grandpa gave his assets to. When old Master Shi passed away, Shi Qing did go to send him off. There was no way of salvaging the damage that had already been done in the past. By the time old Master Shi realized that his son and granddaughter were the greatest hopes of the family, the relationship between the three generations had soured so badly that there was no way of mending it. Old Master Shi could feel that Shi Qing and Shi Peng might have been willing to visit him occasionally and hire someone to take care of him. But the problem was that his son and granddaughter were not at all close to him and did not treat him any better than they would a stranger. Since he was already advanced in his years, he also wanted to enjoy the joy of having his family and grandchildren close to him, unlike the past decade when he had been blinded by power. At that time, all he cared about was elevating the Shi family's status in society. Whoever could help do so would be his best child or grandchild. How would old Shi ever have known that he would one day yearn for true kinship? By the time he desired it, there was no one in his family who was willing to be close to him anymore. Did he regret it? In the last few years of his life, it was a given that old Shi regretted it. He watched on as his friends were surrounded by their children and grandchildren, all living blissful lives. He looked once again at himself. It was true that he lived in a mansion, with servants looking after his needs, but it was so quiet and lonely in his home. Old Shi had regretted it long ago. It was rare that his son and granddaughter came to visit. But when old Shi tried to mend the relationship between them, Shi Qing and Shi Peng stayed mum for a long while, pretending that they did not understand what he meant. Actually, Shi Qing and Shi Peng had already conveyed clearly through their attitudes that all they were willing to do was to provide for him while he was still alive. They would not do anything beyond that. All that about having the time of his life with his grandchildren and family would not work in the Shi family. The father and daughter were only fulfilling their duties of supporting old Shi in his old age. Perhaps it was because of this that old Shi was always downcast in the last few years of his life. Since he was unhappy, it was difficult for him to live a long life. Before old Shi passed away, he had grabbed onto Shi Peng's hand and muttered some unintelligible words. Looking into his father's eyes, Shi Peng understood that his father had regretted his actions and was apologizing to him. Shi Peng patted old Shi's hands. "Dad, if you are reincarnated, I think it's better for you just have one child the next time." If his father had only one child, he would never have to make a comparison between his children. Chapter 1734, Gaining Advantages. A parent would always pay more attention to the child that he hoped would go further in life, and he would give more help and resources to that child. On the contrary, he would completely lose the reins on the other child who would then be deemed to be useless. So would this still be counted as raising a child? Shi Peng had just mentioned this in passing to Shi Qing, who had sneered upon hearing it. If it was not for the fact that old Shi was already gone and she had to respect the dead, Shi Qing really wanted to say something. A person forgets about the evils of the world and thinks only of good things nearing death. The problem was that whatever her grandpa had said was utter nonsense. After old Master Shi passed away, Shi Qing lost all contact with her aunt, Qi Minlin. As for Chu Chenexai, whom Shi Qing could never get along with, Shi Qing kept her distance from her even more. Oh, I guess my dad could not care less about her. That's why she's come to find me for help. Zhu Baoqiu looked at his wife, who was still as stubborn as ever, with a doting but helpless gaze. Aren't you just spouting nonsense? You should know best what kind of person Chu Chenexai is. If she isn't at her wit's end, do you think she would have humbled herself to ask for your help? Chu Chenexai has never been good at anything, but she's always been more prideful than anyone else. Thankfully for Zhu Baoqiu, his wife was unlike Chu Chenexai. It had been more than a decade since that incident, and his own son had already entered university. Zhu Baoqiu had already let go of whatever had happened while he was younger. Now, Zhu Baoqiu treated Jiaonan as his relative and even saw her as his biological younger sister. Since Jiaonan was his sister, it was only natural that Zai Sheng was his brother-in-law. Since he was young, his elders had always forced him to address Zai Sheng as elder brother. Now, Zai Sheng had become his younger brother-in-law. Zhu Baoqiu could not help but exclaim that it was awesome to have a younger sister like Jiaonan. Because of her, he had become Zai Sheng's elder brother. Humph! Shi Qing snorted. If she's so unwilling, she might as well not come. It's not as though I'm dying to see her. The sight of Chu Chenexai evoked memories of how insensible she had been as a child and how she had always been bullied by Chu Chenexai. Chu Chenexai was truly a troublesome relative. In fact, Shi Qing had other relatives who were kind and had only good intentions. These relatives were none other than the family of Shi Qing's maternal grandma, the Feng family. After Feng Cheng had Shi Peng's company, she did not care as much about her family. But the Feng family was still the same as before and always asked Feng Cheng to discuss and resolve their problems. Feng Cheng had little choice since she was Shi Peng's wife and Shi Qing's mom. As long as they persuaded Feng Cheng would deal with her husband and her daughter. Then, the Feng family would have two powerful connections on their side. Feng Cheng also hoped that her husband and daughter would have good relationships with her own family. If her daughter and husband made good progress and helped her family out, it would be a mutually beneficial situation in the future, and everyone could go even further. That would be the best possible scenario. But Shi Peng reasoned it out with Feng Cheng. They had been in the capital for such a long time. Logically speaking, it should be the Shi family who should be unstable and the one who should seek help from the Feng family. In reality, the father and daughter had struggled for years to establish themselves in the capital. During that period, the father and daughter had never gone to the Feng family for help. On the contrary, the Feng family constantly called the Shi family to ask them for favors. Beginnings were always the toughest. The Shi family had been able to get through even the most difficult part, which was the beginning. But why was it that the Feng family, who had always been living in the capital, had so many problems? Why couldn't they solve a single one of their problems but always had to ask for the Shi family's help? Of course it was good for everyone to grow together and help each other out, but the Feng family could not expect to receive help without giving any help, right? In the end, the Shi family might get so caught up with helping the Feng family up that they themselves might collapse. It was only natural that a woman would think differently before and after marriage. Besides, Feng Cheng shared a good relationship with Shi Peng and had a daughter like Shi Qing. In the past, when she had seen her parents-in-law favor Chu Chenexai and ignore her daughter, Feng Cheng had been heartbroken. Now, her family was trying to sacrifice her husband's and daughter's interests so as to benefit themselves. It would have been all right if this was just a one-off matter. But because it happened so frequently, it was not just Shi Peng and Shi Qing who were upset. Feng Cheng herself was upset and felt that they were trying to drag her down. Had it been a petty man in this situation, they would have gotten into a fight long ago. Feng Cheng knew that the Feng family had never helped them the slightest bit ever since their family of three moved to the capital. Based on this alone, the Feng family was being extremely unreasonable. After chatting with Shi Peng, Feng Cheng, who was already angry, decided to wash her hands off her family's affairs. She was not going to care about them anymore. Anyway, their eventual goal was always her husband and daughter every time they called to discuss a matter with her. She was like the middleman. She did not intend to live such an exhausting life. After coming to her senses and getting rid of the burden that was the Feng family, Feng Cheng's life got much easier. Now that she had finally come to this realization, Xi Peng and Xi Qing were beneficiaries of it too. Xi Qing thought that it was rather funny that Qiu Chenxi had come to visit her today. Xi Qing did not even care about her grandma. What made Qiu Chenxi think that she would care about Qiu Chenxi's affair? Did Qiu Chenxi really think that she had such a good relationship with her? Or did she have too much free time on hand? All right, don't get upset. If you don't want to help her, just take a leaf out of your dad's book and refuse to meet her. Zhu Baoqiu was not at all affected by this. After all, he had no contact with Qiu Chenxi. There was nothing wrong with not meeting someone he was unfamiliar with. If he got angry every time someone came to ask for help, both he and his dad would have died long ago. That's right. I'm not going to meet her. Xi Qing slammed the table. She's treating me as her second choice and she's afraid that I'll get upset at her. Ha! What is she? Does she think I have so much free time? If I really have that much free time to get angry at her, I might as well read a few more resumes of those new recruits. Getting angry at Qiu Chenxi would only waste her time and energy. Now that she was being refused again at the Zhu family's door, Qiu Chenxi's expression darkened. Ma Ji's face darkened and he took a deep breath. All right, let's go. I don't think we'll be able to change anything. When he had first gotten married to Qiu Chenxi, he had already been rather hesitant. He wondered if he had married the right woman. Of course, in the years following that, Ma Ji had gotten his fair share of benefits and advantages because of his wife, Qiu Chenxi. Chapter 1735, Sarcasm. Qiu Chenxi was a coder herself and was in quite a good position. The Zhu family and Qi family had never thought of them as relatives. Thankfully, this relation to them had still brought about many benefits. Before today, Ma Ji had always felt as though he had married the right woman and that Qiu Chenxi was the right one for him. But today, Ma Ji realized that there would come a time when he would have to spit out all those benefits that he had once gotten because of Qiu Chenxi. The Zhu families and the Xi family's attitudes were even more resolute than the rumors. They did not even bother to preserve some dignity for Qiu Chenxi. But that was understandable. They had already been in the capital for more than 10 years and had been in-laws with the Xi family for more than a decade. Chief Zhu was even his younger brother-in-law. But even with such outstanding relatives, he had never once had the opportunity to have a meal with them. Chief Zhu might be his brother-in-law, but he had never dared to address Chief Zhu as his brother. Neither did Chief Zhu address him as an elder brother. Occasionally, the two of them would look at each other from afar. He would see Chief Zhu, but Chief Zhu hardly noticed his existence, much less show any affection toward him. Ma Ji sighed anxiously. Now that our family's moving away, you should go to Yuan's school and handle the transfer procedures for her. My mom has already looked for a high school for Yuan. The Ma family had always been prepared for the worst. Now that the documents had come from their superiors, it was almost certain that they would not be able to change the outcome. But nothing was impossible. Thus, upon learning of their sons and daughter-in-law's reassignment, the two elders of the Ma family immediately started doing their homework. They had already found out about the place and gotten a rough sense of the whole situation. Now that their son and daughter-in-law were being transferred out of the capital, it might be years before they returned. So it was only natural for father and mother Ma to tag along. Wherever their son was where they would be. The most important thing was undoubtedly where they would stay. But other than that, father and mother Ma were also worried about which school would be suitable for their granddaughter. At the same time, father and mother Ma did not try to stop their son and daughter-in-law from seeing if they could turn the situation around. If they could stay in the capital, their lives might get harder, but at least, it would be a happy ending for everyone. If they had no choice but to leave the capital, at least, they would not be caught off guard and things would not be so chaotic. Do we really have to leave? Chu Chenxi felt indignant. The capital was so good that she could not bear to leave. Ma Ji sneered. I don't want to leave either. But do you really think that we can choose not to leave? You know very well the situation of our Ma family. I don't have that ability, so I'll have no choice but to leave. If you're that capable, I'll support you. But he did not want to embarrass himself alongside Chu Chenxi anymore. Ma Ji could not understand how people could be so different. All the Ma family was lacking was some connections. That was why he had married Chu Chenxi, who was a few years older than him. He had hoped to improve the Ma family's connections through Chu Chenxi's relation to the Shi family and the Zhu family. Of course, before his marriage, Ma Ji already knew that Chu Chenxi was not on the best of terms with the Shi family and the Zhu family. But Ma Ji had always thought that the conflict could not be too serious. They were relatives in a family, after all. As long as they all had genuine and sincere hearts, all these conflicts would eventually be resolved. When that time came, the Ma family would achieve meteoric success. But in the past decade, he had never had any contact with the Shi family or the Zhu family. These two families did not even acknowledge the Ma family as their relatives. The Ma family did not have such opportunities. That was why he had to take such things into consideration when getting married. Love was nothing but a superfluous thing. It could not be tangible and practical benefits, after all. Chu Chenxi had such good fortune. Her own uncle had become an important cadre in the central government, and her cousin had become a famous female general. If he had been the one with an uncle and cousin like them, he would probably have risen by at least 3 ranks. How capable was his wife that she had been able to sour the relationship with her relatives so badly that there was no hope of ever salvaging it. They were already married and even had a daughter in high school. Even if he knew what a failure Chu Chenxi was as a person by wasting such good resources, there was nothing Ma Ji could do about it. He could not possibly separate from Chu Chenxi just based on these reasons, right? After Ma Ji's sarcastic remarks, Chu Chenxi's face turned blue. But she had no way of rebuking Ma Ji because what he had said was nothing but the truth. She did not want to leave, but her uncle had refused to see her. Shi Qing had finally gotten this opportunity to mock her, but Shi Qing had chosen not to do so and simply ignore her instead. That was already quite kind of her. Chu Chenxi had already thought of the worst-case scenario before visiting Shi Qing. She was worried that Shi Qing would not only refuse to help her because of what had happened during their childhoods, but Shi Qing might even mock and jeer at her. That was a very possible scenario. Thankfully, Shi Qing did not appear, and neither did she do that. But Shi Qing was just as heartless as her uncle had been. She refused to even meet Chu Chenxi, let alone help her. Now that things had progressed to this stage, there was nothing Chu Chenxi could do. Taking Ma Ji's advice, Chu Chenxi could only rush down to handle the transfer procedures for her daughter, Ma Yuan. Upon hearing that she was about to transfer schools and was even going to leave the capital with her parents for a remote city that she had never even heard of before, Ma Yuan was stunned. Why do we have to leave? Haven't we been living comfortably here? What kind of place is that? I've never even heard of it before. I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay in the capital. Mom, neither should you and Dad go. She would never leave such a good place like the capital for a place that she had never heard of before. The order has already been given. Your dad and I don't have a choice. Chu Chenxi rolled her eyes impatiently. How could Yuan think that she was a willing party in this matter? She was more reluctant than anyone else. No one knew just how much she had given up just to come to the capital. Leaving meant that she was giving everything up and returning to the past in just one day. Don't dawdle. The order was given in quite a hurry this time. Your dad and I have to leave immediately. If you don't leave with us now, you can choose to stay here in the capital alone. We'll give you a monthly allowance and you'll take care of yourself. Your other choice is to hurry up and not think about anything. No matter how reluctant she was to leave, Chu Chenexai was no longer resisting her fate that was already decided. All she could do was accept it. Why? I won't take a monthly allowance from you. Let Grandma and Grandpa stay here to take care of me. Won't that solve the problem? Ma Yuan had never done any household chores since she was a child. Even now that she was staying in a dormitory since she was in high school, she never washed her own clothes. She always waited to bring them home for her housekeeper or grandma to wash them. Chapter 1736, So Wealthy. Ma Yuan knew that if she were to stay in the capital alone, not only would she have to wash her own clothes, but even having a meal would be a problem when she returned home from school during her holidays. Don't you know your grandparents well? They are inseparable from their son. You're nowhere near as important as your dad is in their eyes. Your solution isn't feasible. The Ma family had never despised her for giving birth to a daughter. In fact, her parents-in-law had always treated their granddaughter, Yuan, quite well. But Chu Chenexai was always clear that in her parents-in-law's hearts, Ma Ji would always take top priority. Even after her daughter was born, her parents-in-law's hearts had always been set on Ma Ji alone. Her daughter would only lose tragically if she were to try to fight for her grandparents' affection with her own father. So? Have you decided? If you're going to leave with me, I'll get the transfer procedures done. But if you've decided to stay, you'll have to wash your own clothes and learn to cook from now on. The Ma family was not particularly well off. While they did not have to worry about affording necessities, they definitely could not afford to hire 2 housekeepers. Her parents-in-law were already advanced in age. Being a filial son, Ma Ji had hired a housekeeper, hoping to lighten the burden on the elder couple. But that was the most that Ma Ji could afford. It was impossible for the Ma family to spend as much as they earned given their family's situation. With Ma Yuan in high school now, her tuition fees had increased by several times. Once Ma Yuan entered university, they would have to fork out even more money. All this money would have to come from Ma Ji's and Chu Chenexai's savings. There was no way the couple could afford to pay for it with their salaries alone. Thus, if Ma Yuan wanted to stay behind in the capital, she would have no choice but to learn to take care of herself. Hiring a nanny was simply out of the question. Ma Yuan pulled a long face. Is there really no way? Can't you or Dad do something about it? Her parents had already been working in the capital for so many years. Was there really not a single person who could help them? Chu Chenexai's expression changed and she lowered her voice. Do you now understand why I didn't allow you to date other boys and wanted you to wait until you got the chance to get together with Zai Yi? Zai Sheng is a chief, a prominent figure whose smallest actions have a great impact. What do you think would happen if such an important figure became your father-in-law? Think about it. What would your identity be in 20 or 30 years when your husband takes over that position? What I want to give isn't just any random title. This is truly infinite glory and prestige. Do you understand? All she had wanted was to give Yuan the best. Chu Chenexai regretted, not for the first time, not having kept a closer eye on Zai Sheng while she was younger. That was why Qiaonan had managed to snatch Zai Sheng away from her. The most exasperating thing was that Qiaonan had not only snatched her husband away but had also snatched her master away. She knew that old Lin had left a huge inheritance to Qiaonan when he passed away. In the capital alone, he had left 3 or 4 houses to her. And they were all within the third ring neighborhood. Amongst them, one was a villa, and another was in the military courtyard. Thinking about the property prices in the capital, Chu Chenexai felt the pinch. Qiaonan had too many houses to live in. On the other hand, she could not even afford to buy a medium-sized apartment in a better neighborhood within the capital for her daughter as her dowry. If she had managed to become old Lin's disciple at that time, even without a husband like Zai Sheng, she would have gotten a huge inheritance anyway. Then, she would have nothing to worry about. Every time her mom mentioned Zai Yi's name in the past, Ma Yuan always felt repulsed. Otherwise, she would not have rebelled against her mom and started dating Gao Feng behind her mom's back. At Ma Yuan's age, it was only natural that she was slightly rebellious. But at this moment, when her mom mentioned Zai Yi, Ma Yuan's attitude was completely different. The name Zai Yi was no longer just a fictitious thing but a reality. Mom, is it really true that our family will not need to leave the capital for such a remote place if Zai Yi was my boyfriend now? Was the Zai family really that powerful? He, Chu Chenexai laughed while helping her daughter clear the things in her bedroom and pack them into suitcases so that it would be easier to bring them home later. I'll put it in this way. Whatever power Zai Yi's dad has now, Zai Yi is bound to have eventually. Zai Yi's mom. Don't underestimate that woman. Although she was not born into a powerful family, her tactics are brilliant. She's extremely wealthy and has a huge villa in the capital. If you get to live there in the future, you'll have a good life. A huge villa? Don't fool me, Mom. What kind of place is the capital? Purchasing just an average-sized apartment takes so much time to save up for it. How much would a huge villa cost? Would she not know about how much a cadre in the capital's central government earned? She did believe that the Zai family was powerful. It was almost for sure that her life would not be tough because the Zai family was powerful. But the Zai family was also rich? That had to be a joke. Well, she had a rich master. When you get together with Zai Yi in the future, remember to get in her good books. Of course, you won't have to worry about this mother-in-law as long as you stand united with Zai Yi and get him to listen to you. There were only sons who neglected their mothers after getting married. No mothers would ever abandon their own sons. If Zai Yi's heart was completely for Yuan, Xiaonan would have no choice but to treat Yuan well as her eldest daughter-in-law, and she would have to give Yuan some benefits in order to maintain a good relationship with Zai Yi. But the men of the Zai family. I've told you before that Zai Yi is almost definitely a filial child. In short, as long as you have a good relationship with Xiaonan, you'll be able to lead a better than average life even if you were just to stay at home without working for the rest of your life. You'll be able to buy whatever you want. Your future mother-in-law is richer than you can ever imagine. The most reassuring thing is that your future mother-in-law's money has all come from legal sources. They would not have to worry about the Anti-Corruption Bureau coming to confiscate Xiaonan's money one day. Are they really that wealthy? Ma Yuan was taken aback. In that instant, Zai Yi's name suddenly became much more real in her eyes. If she were to get together with Zai Yi, not only would she gain power, but she would also have money on hand. Didn't you say that the Zai family members are cadres in the central government and are all righteous? How did they get so rich? And it had not been through illegal means. I can't say for sure since I'm not part of the Zai family. How would I know all about your future mother-in-law? Once you marry into the family, you'll have loads of time to figure out why she has so much money. She has 3 children in total, so you should know that you'll stand to gain more if you perform well and gain her favor. Chapter 1737, 3 Forces. You should just keep in mind that there's nothing wrong with your future mother-in-law's money. Once you marry into the family, you can rest assured and just take as much money as she is willing to give you to spend. When that time comes, don't forget about how many ideas your mom has given you now. She also wanted to live a life where she had an endless source of money to spend. Unfortunately, she no longer had a chance to do so in this lifetime. Her daughter might be able to get money from Xiaonan, but there was a limit to how filial her daughter could be to her and how much money she could share with her. But that did not matter. Once Xiaonan handed whatever she had over to her children, would Xiaonan still be able to decide on how Yuan should show her filial piety toward her? She had to take good care of her health so that she could live a long life. Even if it had come a few years too late, she would still be able to enjoy Xiaonan's wealth during her lifetime. Ma Yuan's gaze grew serious. Don't worry, Mom. I'll make sure to work hard. Mom, you're the one who treats me the best in this entire world. I definitely won't forget about you. I know you want the best for me, and you're doing everything for my good. If she had known that being together with Zai Yi would bring so many benefits to her and that she would be part of the upper class, she would never have felt so repulsed toward Zai Yi. Neither would she have started dating Gao Feng. Zai Yi's background was truly exceptional. She would have to put in her utmost effort. Otherwise, such an outstanding person like Zai Yi would definitely be picky when choosing his other half. If she did not meet Zai Yi's requirements, that blissful life would not be hers. Mom, I understand your painstaking efforts. I won't do anything to disappoint you in the future. You did tell me about what Zai Yi is like as a person and what kind of temperament he has. But at that time, I was upset about you taking things into your own hands and deciding on my behalf how my life should be and who my future partner should be. That was why I didn't take you seriously. I'll definitely remember whatever you've taught me in the future. I'll work hard to become the kind of young lady that Zai Yi likes. Mom, I'll definitely succeed. Today, their family would leave the capital in dismay. But one day, she would return with her head held high. Hearing Ma Yuan's determination, Chu Chenxi was overjoyed. Now that you've said that, I know that all my efforts in the past were not in vain. You're still young, and Zai Yi hasn't graduated from university yet. As long as you're willing to work hard, there is still time. I believe in you. You'll definitely succeed in anything you put your mind to. Yes. The mother and daughter had a good chat and were both very enthusiastic, but they had no idea that their whole family was suddenly being transferred out of the capital because they had set their sights on Zai Yi. If Chu Chenxi and her daughter had chosen to live down-to-earth lives, outsiders would not even care about the Ma family or bother to learn more about them. The more the mother and daughter desired to do so, the further away would the Ma family's wish of returning to the capital be. Knowing that the Ma family was finally leaving the capital with Chu Chenxi and her daughter and were even bringing Qi Minlin along, Xiaonan finally breathed a sigh of relief. The triplets haven't grown up fully yet, but there are already too many people eyeing on them. Brother Zai, I'm suddenly worried about our daughter. What should we do? Xiaonan was afraid that a young lady like San Bao would be easily taken advantage of. Don't overthink it. You're just scaring yourself. As an only daughter, it was only natural that Zai Sheng placed great importance on San Bao. Even if Zai Sheng did not pay as much attention to San Bao as other fathers did to their daughters, who treated their daughters like their lovers, Zai Sheng's love for San Bao was no less than other fathers. Even if the other party was a good and responsible man, Zai Sheng had the urge to beat up whichever rascal that wanted to abduct his daughter. He could totally imagine a dirty rascal who had bad intentions and wanted to lie to San Bao like how Weida had done at that time. Zai Sheng chuckled. He had never met anyone who was so brave and bold. If he were really to meet someone like that, only then would he know in detail how he would deal with that person. Leaning in Zai Sheng's embrace, Xiaonan could only try to comfort herself. I do hope that I'm just overthinking. After all, both De Bao and Er Bao have already experienced it. Do you think San Bao will be able to avoid it? Zai Sheng patted Xiaonan's back and sneered even more coldly. Nan, you're really overthinking this. Among all the children, other than your senior who also has a daughter, San Bao is the only female. If San Bao were to have a boyfriend, don't you think that all those rascals will dig through the other party's family background and do a thorough check? Those rascals whom they had raised were all wolf cubs. There were vicious ones, fierce ones, and impulsive ones. They had all sorts of differing tempers. If anyone wanted to abduct a young lady from the Zai family, they would really have to consider it carefully and think about whether they had any lives to spare and whether their bodies would be able to bear it. San Bao was the only rose among the thorns. Not only did all the parents cherish her, but they also all taught their sons to fight back on their sister's behalf if anyone were to bully her. No matter what happened, they would not have to worry as long as they did not kill the other party. If the matter got too serious, their parents would take responsibility for everything. As long as they were standing up for Sanbeo, not only would they not get in trouble, but they would also be lauded for their good work and rewarded with a good meal. If they performed well, they would even be able to make a request for a reward. With Zai Sheng's reminder, Qiao Nan turned sullen. Brother Zai, now that you're saying that, I'm worried that Sanbeo might never find a boyfriend. Even if she finds one, I'm afraid that they'll break up easily. When do you think Sanbeo will be able to get married and let me become a grandma? With so many sly foxes and wolf cubs waiting around her daughter, would her daughter ever get married? Qiao Nan had been living a blissful life ever since she got married. Perhaps it was because her life was so blissful that she felt as though it had just been yesterday that she had just gotten to know Zai Sheng. In the blink of an eye, the couple had already been married for more than 20 years, and their 3 children were already about to graduate from university. Zai Yu had probably inherited Qiao Nan's talent for foreign languages. Additionally, she had received training from Old Lin and Qiao Nan from a young age. As such, Zai Yu performed quite well in foreign languages. Not only had she become an alumnus of Qiao Nan's alma mater, but she had also become Qiao Nan's junior and colleague. As for Zai Yi and Zai Xin, their results had been so stellar in school that they had graduated ahead of time. Zai Yi had joined the army, and Zai Xin had fulfilled his dream of joining the Air Force. The day he donned the military uniform, Zai Xin had even joked with Zai Yu that they would really have covered all 3 forces in this generation had Zai Yu joined the military and gone into the navy. Chapter 1738, Good Reason. After hearing Zai Xin's words, no one had any ideas. But a thought suddenly flashed through Zai Hua's mind, and she turned her attention to her son, Tian Haoran. Sanbeo had not gone to the navy, but her son, Xiao Bao, could. Tian Haoran immediately saw through his mom's idea. Mom, don't even think about it. I won't survive in this industry. He had no intention of being a soldier. He did not want to follow in his mom's footsteps and be away from home for a good part of the year. Tian Haoran knew that his desire for the military was nowhere as strong as her 2 elder brothers. Most importantly, his dad had left such a massive company to him. He would eventually have to take over from his dad. Tian Haoran enjoyed doing research, and all the research that he did was on things that could be put into production in his own company. Based on this alone, it was clear that Tian Haoran had a plan for his own future. Because of his son's decision, Tian Dong had been smug in front of Zai Hua for a long time. True enough, their son took after his father and was not as crazy as Hua to insist on becoming a soldier. Knowing that Xiao Bao had no intention of joining the military and would instead take over the family business, his parents had been relieved at the time of their passing. The daughter-in-law's family background was extraordinary, and she herself did not have a bad temper. Even if they had their own opinions towards Zai Hua's career as her parents-in-law, they had never mentioned it in front of Zai Hua. When Zai Hua was not around, they even helped take care of Tian Haoran. But mother and father Tian had completely different attitudes when it came to their grandson. They knew just how difficult it was to be a soldier, and they had seen it for themselves. Their grandson had grown up being pampered and spoiled by them. He had never suffered hardship or gone through any difficult times since he was a child. If he really went to the army, he would have to experience all these hardships firsthand. Suffering hardships was nothing much. What mother and father Tian were most worried about was the possibility of going to war. It was true that the country was at peace now, but soldiers never enjoyed any peace. Even if there was no war going on between countries, there would still be evil people committing terrorist acts. Tian Haoran was the only grandson of the Tian family. If anything were to happen to Tian Haoran, the elderly couple felt that neither of them would be able to continue living anymore. Even if their grandson had not expressed keenness in the army like their daughter-in-law, they could never rest easy with their daughter-in-law around. They were deeply afraid that after they were gone, the grandson would be coerced by their daughter-in-law to join the army and do those dangerous things. Knowing the dilemma that his grandparents were facing, Tian Haoran took the initiative to confess to them that he had no intention of joining the military. That day, Tian Haoran had chatted with his grandparents alone. Even his father, Tian Dong, had no idea about what the three of them had spoken about, let alone his mom, Zai Hua. But what the couple realized was that after their son spoke to their parents, the elderly couple had never once worried about this matter again. They had been utterly convinced by Tian Haoran. Until now, Zai Hua had not figured out how her son was so capable as to allow her parents-in-law to pass on without any worries. Zai Hua had asked Tian Haoran about this more than once, but Tian Haoran had never told his mom about what had happened. Because of this matter, Zai Hua had even thrown a tantrum at Tian Haoran, saying that it was all Tian Dong's fault. Initially, Tian Dong had no idea what his son had told his parents either. But gradually, Tian Dong saw through Tian Haoran's plan. Behind Zai Hua's back, Tian Dong told Tian Haoran directly. "Your mom and I have raised you in vain. Do you remember that you're a Tian, not a Zai, or a Qiao?" The child that he had raised with so much effort was always thinking of others. He wondered how Zai Hua would feel. Tian Dong himself felt a little sour. He had always loved his son, Tian Haoran, deeply and pampered him. But why had his son not followed in his path? Tian Haoran refused to take his father's bait. "Are you sure you were the one who raised me? I can't deny that you and mom were the ones who gave birth to me, but I can't really say who really raised me. Believe it or not, if you tell mom about what I think, mom might give up the idea of sending me into the military to cover all three forces in our family. She might even support me taking over your company." Tian Dong suffered a huge blow. Is Qiao Nan really that good? Why was it that his wife and son all placed such importance on Qiao Nan's words? As a husband and father, he wondered how he was ranked in their hearts. Of course. Tian Haoran nodded forcefully. He had always thought that his family had two fathers. Her mom was no different from his dad. All his impressions of what a mother was supposed to be like came from his aunt, Qiao Nan. There was truly no one who could beat Qiao Nan in this world. When he looked for a wife in the future, he had to find a young lady like his aunt. His uncle had such good fortune. Tian Haoran and Qiao Nan were willing parties, so Tian Dong could not care less. But Qiao Nan was completely clueless about all of this. There was only one reason why Tian Haoran wanted to take over the family business. It was because Qiao Nan had shares in the Tian Corporation. The revenue of the Tian Corporation had a direct impact on Qiao Nan's annual income as well as her standard of living. If anything went wrong with the Tian Corporation, it would take a huge toll on Qiao Nan. That was why Tian Haoran had decided to take over the reins of his father's company and bring the Tian Corporation to greater heights. He knew that this was the only way he could help elevate the standard of living of his favorite aunt. The Tian family was wealthy, and all of this wealth would eventually be his. But if he were to directly hand some money over to his aunt would definitely refuse. If Tian Corporation's revenue was high, his aunt would receive more dividends. He was sure that his aunt would not refuse in such a situation. To let his aunt and her family lead a better life, he had to become the boss of the Tian Corporation. He felt uneasy handing the company over to someone else. How could anyone do a better job than him? Tian Haoran had good reason, and Tian Dong could not rebuke him. After all, his son and wife were all Qiao Nan's fans. Die-hard fans, no less. As head of the house, there was really nothing he could do about this mother and son pair. In the end, Tian Dong could only accept his fate like his parents had. Tian Haoran was close to the Zai family and liked Qiao Nan very much. All along, mother and father Tian had their opinions regarding this. After all, their grandson should be the closest to them. Why was it that he was closest to his maternal grandma's family? Mother and father Tian had been most worried about their grandson joining the military, but they had never expected that their grandson would resolutely choose to become a businessman because of Jiaonan. He said it was because he wanted to bring the Tian Corporation to greater heights and increase their company's revenue. Tian Haoran's explanation was really hard for Mother and Father Tian to swallow. Chapter 1739, Old Buddies. Their grandson was the one who was going to be the boss, but he wanted to expand their company's business just to let Jiaonan have a better life. It seemed as though the role and feelings of a boss and shareholder had been swapped. Even though this logic sounded ridiculous, Mother and Father Tian understood their grandson wholeheartedly. Their grandson would really do such a thing for Jiaonan. Thus, Mother and Father Tian could finally be at ease. It did not matter what their daughter-in-law thought. It would all depend on their grandson's decision, and their grandson's decision would always be influenced by Jiaonan's existence. As long as it was for Jiaonan, they could almost be certain that their grandson would not be lying. That was great. Now, all their problems had been solved. Even if Father and Mother Tian were to pass away at this very moment, they would do so without any regrets. Their son had gotten married later than others. Their daughter-in-law had only married into their family when other families' children were already graduating from elementary school. But they had still managed to see their grandson grow up healthily into an intelligent and outstanding young man. Knowing that the Tian family had a successor, there was nothing else that they worried about. Unable to see their grandson date or what kind of girlfriend he would find for himself was their only regret. Thankfully, they believed that with his parents around and an aunt like Jiaonan watching over him, the wife that their grandson found for himself would surely be one of good character. With that knowledge, Mother and Father Tian both passed on peacefully. After graduation, the triplets fulfilled each of their own dreams and engaged in the work that they had longed to do. Naturally, that put them in a good mood. Tian Haoran followed soon after and graduated from university less than 2 years after the triplets had graduated. While Tian Haoran was studying, he had already been actively involved in scientific research. Quite a few of his research findings had been put into production after rounds of examination, approvals, and appraisals. All these had helped the Tian Corporation win many projects and had also increased the revenue of the Tian Corporation. As such, Tian Haoran had already made a name for himself within the Tian Corporation while he was still a student. The senior management of the Tian Corporation all knew that Tian Haoran was the crown prince of the Tian Corporation. At a young age, he was already so capable and was even bringing in revenue for the company. They could not be more assured by the fact that Tian Haoran would be the one taking over the company in the future. They were completely convinced that the Tian Corporation would only develop even further, faster, and more steadily under the leadership of this crown prince, Tian Haoran, instead of under Tian Dong. In short, before Tian Haoran even became an official employee of the Tian Corporation, he had already laid down foundations for his reputation and prestige. When Tian Haoran entered the Tian Corporation, there had been no drastic changes made to the organization. No one in the company dared to fool Tian Haoran or treat him like a young and foolish person who was easy to bully. On the contrary, their respect for Tian Haoran was no less than that for Tian Dong. The employees of the Tian Corporation were extremely clear that the Tian father and son were more than able to lead them to make even more money. Seeing Tian Haoran suddenly acting like a CEO, Gao Feng chuckled. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Wearing a suit really makes you seem like a beast. They had played together since they were children and had grown up together. Because of their close relationship, Gao Feng had never bothered to address Tian Haoran as his elder brother. Of course, Tian Haoran did not take issue with Gao Feng not addressing him as an elder brother. He did not want such a foolish younger brother like Gao Feng anyway. Aren't you in university now? In a few years' time, you'll be taking the same path that I have taken. I wonder if you'll be able to do as well as I have. There are lots of people who pride themselves on their seniority. If you lack capability, you'll never be able to win these guys over. Tian Haoran was clear that the employees in the company were only respectful to him on the surface. In reality, there was bound to be 1 or 2 people who felt that he had just entered society, and was therefore foolish and easily deceived. They wanted him to focus wholeheartedly on research and leave the decision-making to the senior management of the company. Did they really think he was a fool? If he were to agree to that way of running the company, he might not even be the one making decisions in the Tian Corporation. The Tian family was the Tian Corporation's largest shareholder and boss. All these suggestions kindly put forward by these elders made it seem as though he was working for someone else in his own company. Tian Haoran had been doing research for many years and did look a little inflexible. But Tian Haoran was the son of that sly old fox, Tian Dong. Putting aside teachings, by genetics alone, there was no way Tian Haoran would be a little bunny who would allow himself to be surrounded by a pack of wolves and not do anything. Even if Tian Haoran was really a little bunny, he still had a set of teeth that could even bite through diamonds. Then, the wolves might not even get to eat rabbit meat. Quite the contrary, they might even get bitten by the rabbit, lose their limbs, and become disabled. Now, whatever troubles and problems Tian Haoran was facing, Gao Feng would experience them too when he entered his father's company. Because they were all friends, Tian Haoran had kindly given Gao Feng a heads up so he would know what he was in for. Otherwise, he might not even want to recognize him as his elder brother when that time came. How meaningless would it be for him to be bullied so badly that he would be like a tortoise that was unable to stick his head out in front of all those old fogies. "Heh heh," Zhu Yu chuckled. "Tonight's the last time being so carefree. Don't bother asking me out for any events in the future. Don't look down on Gao Feng. Apart from being a fool in front of women, he's quite smart when it comes to everything else." Because of this, he had often fallen into Gao Feng's trap, allowing Gao Feng to take advantage of him many times when they were younger. As such, Zhu Yu was not at all worried about his friend, Gao Feng. He felt that it would already be good if that bunch of old bones was not too badly bullied by Gao Feng. If so, all those years of rice that they had eaten would not go to waste. "You? We've never expected you to come out with us." Gao Feng made a toast. "Don't you think it's too early for you? You're only in high school, but you've already been recruited into the special forces. Do you want to become the king of the soldiers?" Gao Feng pounded Zhu Yu's body. "Wow, it's all muscles. My fist hurts." He felt as though he was hitting a rock, not meat. Zhu Yu triumphantly showed off his muscles. "Old buddies. Don't be all bronze and no brain, and end up as cannon fodder, and even give your life up." Tian Haoran rolled his eyes at Zhu Yu. In the face of raining bullets, Zhu Yu's muscles would be all but useless. A single bullet would be enough to kill Zhu Yu. No matter how much muscles he had, they would never be able to shield him from bullets. "Can't you say something more pleasant?" Zhu Yu was upset. "If it wasn't late, I wouldn't even bother coming out with you guys. I might as well ask Sister Ziyu if there has been anything going on recently." Chapter 1740, Just as well. There was no point in staying together with a bunch of rascals. When Ziyu was around, she would always take care of his well-being. Unfortunately, by the time the state relaxed its policies and implemented a two-child policy, his parents already had no intention of having another child. Otherwise, he might even have a younger sister to care for. "Don't worry, Sister Ziyu. I'll take care of this. Which man is so blind?" "He he he," Tian Haoran sneered darkly, giving others goosebumps. Gao Feng downed a mouthful of beer. "Are you sure you'll be able to handle it alone?" Ziyu was getting prettier by the day, and she resembled Auntie Qiao. If it was not for the few of them keeping their eyes on her, Ziyu would have long been abducted by those rascals. Humph! He was still a kid who had to ask his parents for pocket money, but he wanted to protect Sister Ziyu? Had he asked them for permission? The three young people sitting there might look young and fresh, but they were all either third-generation rich heirs or from prominent families. In addition to their good family backgrounds, every single one of them had strived hard and had not grown up wayward. Moreover, they were all capable. Typically, children who were still studying, even if they were in university, could never match up to the performance of Tianhaoren and his bunch of friends. In the courtyard, many people had expected to see the Zai family crumble. There was no use in giving birth to so many children. Even if one knew how to give birth to them, one had to know how to raise them well. Then, that would be truly impressive. In such a large capital, they had heard countless stories about children being raised wayward and becoming good-for-nothings in this very same courtyard. It might have been good news that the Zai family had triplets. But was it really that easy to raise and teach them well, considering there were 3 children of the same age? If even 1 out of 3 was raised wayward, they might as well have chosen to raise only 1 and raise that one well instead. In the end, everyone saw Xiao Nan's friends seemingly coming to a tacit agreement and often dropping their kids off at the Zai family. It seemed that these children spent more time with the Zai family than their own families. All these onlookers were confused. Were the Zhu family and the Tian family only in charge of giving birth to their children? Were they not going to take care of their own children? Did these people treat the Zai family as a kindergarten and Xiao Nan as their children's nanny? The Zai family was already busy enough trying to take care of their own 3 children. Now that there were so many more children, were those parents really at ease leaving their children there? Were they not afraid that the Zai family's triplets would bully their children or lead them astray? In normal families, some parents could not even raise just 1 child well, not to mention the Zai family that had a house full of children. Other parents watched on with glee, waiting to see the parents of those children regret their decision of sending their children to Xiao Nan. Time treated every man equally. In the blink of an eye, the Zai family's children were all grown up, and so were their own children. Their own children's performances were actually quite good, but the problem was that they paled in comparison to the children of the Zai family. Of all the children who grew up in the Zai family, not a single one of them grew up wayward. In fact, it seemed as though they had all been on steroids. Not only were they healthy, but they were also intelligent and outstanding in their performances. Many people started to wonder whether it was the Zai family's education methods that were good, or whether these children were good in the first place due to their genes. Did the Zai family and Xiao Nan have nothing to do with the children's performances and growth? Now that these children had grown up so well, all those people who had been waiting to watch some fun had a change in their mindsets. Now, their sons already had their own sons, and their daughters had their own daughters. If the Zai family's education was truly that good, would their grandchildren become as outstanding if they were to be sent to the Zai family? Xiao Nan was not young anymore. In another 2 years' time, she should be retiring. Thus, some people quietly visited the Zai family to discuss this matter with Miao Jing. They wondered if Xiao Nan could start a kindergarten after her retirement. They could really rest assured if their grandchildren were being taken care of by Xiao Nan. Of course, Miao Jing did not even mention a thing about this to Xiao Nan and had refused all these old neighbors right then and there. When they needed them, they said, "We believe in the Zai family." But when they had no need for them, each of them crossed their arms, munched on melon seeds, and waited to see a good show to unfold in the Zai family and just how wayward the children of the Zai family would grow up to be. There was no such good deal in the world. It was true that Nan Nan could teach children well. She had already known about this a few decades earlier when Nan Nan was still in high school. Nan Nan knew how to take care of children and had made a name for herself in Pingcheng long ago. In fact, many people were hoping that Nan Nan would go back to start a tuition class for them. Someone had even said that the best results for the college entrance examination and middle school examination in Pingcheng all had something to do with Nan Nan. The best results of the college entrance examination were naturally during Nan Nan's year. As for the best results for the middle school examination, it had been the year that Nan Nan had been a tutor. Had Nan Nan not become Old Lin's disciple and entered the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Nan Nan would have flourished in the education industry with her ability. Everyone else had thought that the Tian family and the Zhu family were being too bold and brave by sending their children over to the Zai family. But Miao Jing understood that there was no way these people would not be so brave. They were simply taking advantage of Nan Nan by doing so. Miaojing was not at all surprised that these people in the capital had no idea about Nan Nan's capabilities. But Shi Qing was Nan Nan's best friend, and Zhu Baoqiu and Fang Fang had been Nan Nan's classmates. As for Zai Hua, there was no need to mention it. Had they not been close to Jiao Nan, they would never have known that Jiao Nan had such a glorious side to her. After coming to the capital, everyone had maintained their silence and had never once mentioned Nan Nan's glorious past. Miaojing had not told Jiao Nan about all these for fear that Jiao Nan would get angry. But Zhu Yu and the other children knew all about it. Zhu Yu downed a can of beer. Shouldn't we find an opportunity to help Auntie Chiao move out of the courtyard? I don't understand how the people in the courtyard can be so petty and narrow-minded. Won't it be nice if everyone just minds their own business and stays in their own lanes? Why are there so many problems? Tianhaoren raised his eyebrow. Had they not been talking about Sister Zai Yu? Why had the conversation suddenly changed to talking about his aunt? But that was just as well. It's not as though Auntie doesn't have any houses on hand. Why would we need to raise the matter if she wants to move? He knew that his grandparents were not in good health. Besides, his grandpa was somewhat old-fashioned. That house in the courtyard belonged to the Zai family, after all. But if he were to move somewhere else, he would be staying in his daughter-in-law's house. His grandpa would never agree to that. His aunt was always one to please her family. Knowing his grandpa's temper, she had never thought of moving, much less mention it.